Hi everyone, it's your boy Othony Brantano here, the internet's busiest music nerd, and it's time for another installment of STINKPIECE, where I respond to bad music writing online. This week I'm responding to a beautiful op-ed on Pitchfork of all places. Pitchfork! Shout out to Pitchfork, Azealia Banks, and the double standard of mental illness. Considering how much of a train wreck Miss Banks' career has been since the release of her breakout hit 212, this ought to be good. Our writer begins by referencing a viral video featuring Miss Banks that she posted on the internet, which depicts her cleaning what she claims to be 3 years of brujeria. Basically ritualistic chicken sacrifices that Black Twitter was really quick to point out had essentially done nothing to help her career, as Miss Banks is basically a walking L factory. The article here pins some of the controversy surrounding this on people's lack of understanding when it comes to non-Abrahamic religions, and not because it's just made up bullshit and here in reality there's nothing to understand about brutally bleeding out chickens for your own personal gain. It's a heartless act, and only someone as vapid as Miss Banks would post a video of herself cleaning up the aftermath of it on Twitter, while also acting like this is a sensible way to combat things like white supremacy. In a clear instance of doublethink on this article, claims that Azealia Banks is crazy are written off as sensationalist, while our writer acknowledges the very real persona of insanity and instability that seems to follow Miss Banks everywhere she goes, a personal problem that she addressed in a Facebook post, and I guess in the lyrics of the song Soda from her last full-length album. The article then goes on to bemoan the media's relative silence on this issue, and while that's fair, Azealia Banks talking about this struggle in a couple of stray Facebook posts and in a single song on an album that no one listens to anymore is not proof that Azealia Banks is perceived as a broken black woman, and especially not a pioneer. Good attempt at applying that quote from Miss King. Basically what this op-ed is trying to do is paint this imagined double standard, saying that people are ignoring Azealia Banks' pain because she's a woman. Meanwhile, when people like Kanye and Kid Cudi admit that they're going through some mental troubles, their fans just give them endless amounts of undying support. Maybe the difference in which Azealia is treated in comparison to a guy like Kid Cudi is true, but our writer doesn't provide any evidence that this has anything to do with gender, just weak comparisons. Case in point, mental illness, depression, and sadness are a cornerstone of Kid Cudi's entire artistic repertoire. The dude's middle name is Woe Is Me. Kid Cudi's fans directly go to his music to hear about that kind of emotional pain. In fact, that's how Kid Cudi's fans sort of connect with him, with that shared sorrow. Whereas Azealia Banks' fans are more likely to connect with her desperation for attention by eating used tampons. And as far as Kanye goes, I totally get what you mean. Like, he came out totally unscathed when he endorsed Donald Trump. I mean, here's a video of people doing what you said, rationalizing that.
If I would have voted, I would have voted on Trump. Oh shit, you threw something at me. Did somebody else want to throw something at me?
And of course, culture writers are going to try to excuse Kanye hanging out with Trump, doing meetings with Trump. Most of them wouldn't dare critique him in an even slightly aggressive way out of fear that they would be at the other end of some kind of flame war with his most passionate fans. I'm totally fine with that though. Shout out to KTT. You can't use what culture writers say about Kanye as evidence of how the general public sort of sees and reacts to him. If that were the case, if that was what reality was, then he would be nowhere near as controversial as an artist that he actually is. This op-ed just gets more and more disingenuous as it continues, talking about Azealia Banks speaking out about black men belittling her physical appearance or the way she carries herself, and then sympathizing with her being labeled as crazy when why she's labeled as crazy has nothing to do with her speaking out on the belittlement thrown at her by black black men. And it has everything to do with the countless Twitter beefs that she's been embroiled in again and again and again, only a few of which are cited in this article, despite the fact that she's really argued with just about everyone that she could, even Erykah Badu. The article then talks about Azealia Banks' mistreatment in the music industry being overshadowed by these Twitter beefs, but no actual proof or evidence or instances of said mistreatment are brought up in the article, just the Twitter beefs. Basically, the article itself is guilty of what it's accusing other music publications of. The truth of the matter is that Azealia Banks has burned an incredible amount of bridges, even more than one of her biggest rivals, Iggy Azalea, who's very similar in that she just can't seem to stop putting her foot in her mouth, but I don't see this article sympathetically poring over any unfairness in relation to her. Now, at a few points, this article makes mention of the many racist and homophobic remarks that Azealia Banks has made over social media, but doesn't seem to make the connection that people who make such remarks don't typically garner a lot of public sympathy when they're down on their luck. I don't recall Kanye West ever calling anybody a curry-scented bitch or a poon job, and Kanye's track record when it comes to things like homosexuality and now transgenderism, it speaks for itself. But I'm not done with this article yet because the two dumbest paragraphs in this whole thing are right at the end. First off, this quote is uncritically printed of Azealia Banks talking about Kanye says something crazy and everybody loves him. I say something crazy and people rip my head off. No, no, no. Kanye is not hopping on Twitter on a regular basis to fight with his contemporaries and openly disrespect his elders. He's not saying racist shit. He's not saying homophobic shit. Sure, he says crazy dumb things every once in a while, and when he does, like this stupid tweet about schools in Africa and it being the country, when he says these things, even by a lot of his fans, he's universally mocked. However, this doesn't ruin his career because his fans like the spectacle, and we go to Kanye to listen to music. Many of us are not curious about his opinions on world politics. Even when recently Kanye was talking about this lack of camaraderie, of a personal and friendly connection between him and Jay-Z and Beyonce, he wasn't hostilely attacking them. He was just kind of reaching out to them. It didn't seem like he was trying to tear down Jay-Z or Beyonce personally or artistically, which is essentially just a part of Azealia Banks' social media routine. And for an article hosted on a music site, our writer is really quick to write off that this has anything to do with music, discounting the fact that what most likely makes Kanye a way more sympathetic character than Azealia Banks is that he has one genre-defining record under his belt after another. Meanwhile, Azealia Banks has one mediocre album it took way too long to release. If there's a double standard here going on, it's most likely that when people are fans of an artist, fans of a celebrity, whoever, they will automatically have sympathy for that person. They will automatically come to the defense of that person, even if what they've done is indefensible. Look at Bill Cosby. How many people still believe it? He didn't do nothing. People care about Kanye West. They care about the things Kanye West does. I mean, I'm sorry for the rude reality check here, but what is Azealia Banks to the music industry other than an annoying spectacle? Nobody sympathizes with her because nobody wants to, because of the horrible and shitty things that she says. It's not male privilege, but you know, what do I know about privilege? I didn't go to Princeton. What makes even less sense about the framing in this article is that men, the gender that's notoriously mocked and made fun of across the board for being open about their feelings, open about their emotions, open about their pain, they're the ones that for some reason here are getting all the sympathy. Pinning it as privilege by bringing up people like Nina Simone and Lauryn Hill makes even less sense. Because people fucking love Nina Simone and Lauryn Hill. Nobody actively dismisses Lauryn Hill's pain and suffering. From what I've been able to see, fans across the board have been very respectful of her reclusive lifestyle and have consistently elevated her legend status over the couple of very sporadic and erratic performances that she's managed to pull together over the past few years. And while Nina Simone battled some very great personal demons when she was alive, her fantastic and amazing music has, in a lot of ways, overshadowed that history. I don't see anybody writing off Nina Simone because she had some personal issues. This is my favorite quote from the entire article. Banks is not at this genius place yet, but there's little chance she could ever get there if the world writes her off as a crazy villain first. Yeah, you're right. Azealia Banks is not there, and I will predict the future and say she will never get there, because what this op-ed is essentially doing is overinflating the perceived talent of a one-hit wonder. And the reason she continues to be seen as a villain is because she keeps acting like one. Her personal struggles, no matter how bad they may be, don't excuse her shitty behavior, none of which this article has actually been able to attribute to her mental problems. In fact, this article doesn't really divulge or know anything about Azealia Banks' mental problems other than what's been written in a few spotty Facebook posts. Our dear writer here is not Azealia Banks' psychiatrist, so while Azealia Banks may have some personal mental problems, I would say it is possible, no, in fact probable, that all of the hateful, bigoted, insane, and petty things that she says online have little to nothing to do with them, and everything to do with her being a shithead. So please spare me this pity party for one of the music industry's most self-centered, impulsive losers, and just let her fall into obscurity like everybody who makes mediocre music eventually does. Transition, and that is the new episode of Stink Piece right there. Was that mean? Was it? It was probably mean, but videos, other episodes in this series next to my head. Subscribe to the channel, that button is there too, and the official website as well. I hope you're doing well. Eat your fruits and veggies. Don't sacrifice chickens for some made up bullshit, and get a good night's sleep. Forever.